Okay, so what we're going to do now is explore some key concepts that are going to be useful in helping us to understand the difference between what it is that Keynesian and neoclassical economists tend to think. The big one is what's called the NAIRU. And the NAIRU, it stands for the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment, which is quite a mouthful. But at heart, we run out of space. But at heart, it's a relatively simple concept. All it's saying is that there is a level of unemployment at which the inflation rate will be stable, will not accelerate. Don't worry about that too much for now. It makes sense, and you'll see why in a minute. And this is key, because the key question is, this is kind of equilibrium in the economy, and the key question is the extent to which the economy will or won't return to this NAIRU. But first, we need to understand what the NAIRU is, and to do that, we just need to remind ourselves of a key concept that we've looked at before, which is the wage price spiral. If you remember the wage price spiral, we said that on the one hand, we've got product markets. Product markets are where prices are set. So that's where prices increase. And that's what's going on there is determined by competition between firms. If there's lots of competition between firms, then prices will tend not to go up so quickly. If there's not very much competition between firms, then it'll be easy for them to put up prices. And then we have factor markets. In particular, I'm going to focus on the idea of labour markets over here. So labour markets are where wages are set. It determines whether wages are rising or not. If there's a lot of competition between workers, if I want your job and you want my job, then it's going to be hard for me to get a pay rise. But if I'm the only person who can do my job, and there's no competition, then it'll be very easy for me to get a pay rise. It's very easy for wages to go up. And this idea of the wage price, this idea of the wage price spiral, which is what we're going to explore. I know I've mentioned it before, but it is quite important. It's this idea that these two things work together to sustain inflation. And that's important, as you'll see in a little bit. So, if, for example, suppose wages rise, what that means is there's an implication for firms. And the implication is that firms' costs of production go up. They're having to pay more for their factor inputs and so on. So, if there's an increase in wages, firms' costs increase. As a result of which, to protect their profit margins, those firms are likely to increase prices. But of course, if prices increase as a household, what that means is that you now face an increase in your cost of living. We've all seen that over the last year or two. We've seen the price of everything going up. So your cost of living rises, and what that now means is that you now start to expect inflation. You know that inflation is higher. You know that your real wage is being eroded. Your real wage is being reduced because the price of everything in the shops is getting higher. As a result of which, you say, well, I want a big pay rise. You can then see that there is this circle or spiral where an increase in wages increases costs, increases prices, increases the cost of living. Workers realise they demand higher wages, and so on and so forth. So why does that matter? What we need to start thinking about then. So now we're going to use this to explore the NAIRU, and what we're going to start thinking about. I'm going to turn this the other way. Is let's imagine two extreme situations. In one of these situations, let us suppose that unemployment, so UE unemployment, is essentially 0%. So we have unemployment is essentially nil. Everybody has a job. Over here, unemployment is basically about 90%. We have mass unemployment in the economy. There's a huge recession or a depression at that level of unemployment, things are very, very serious. And what we want to be thinking about is, well, what's going to be going on with our wage price spiral at each of these things. Let's suppose that unemployment is 90%. So nobody has a job. The economy is deeply, deeply depressed. If you do have a job, imagine sometimes I talk about the idea of the economy as a restaurant. If the economy is a restaurant in this situation, it's got no customers. If it has 10 tables, only one of those tables has any customers. As a waiter or waitress, you're going to be thinking, oh my God, now it's like I'm going to get fired. You're going to be working as hard as you can, and you're not going to want to demand a pay rise. Firms have a lot of power over you. What's likely to happen when unemployment is so high over here? What's likely to happen is that wages are likely to get pushed down. Because there are loads and loads of other workers who would happily do my job. I'm not going to be asking for a pay rise. Potentially the firm that I'm working for can drive down my wages. But as a result, of course, what that means is that the costs of firms are reduced. And as a result, what's going to happen is inflation is likely to fall. Firms are going to not increase prices, or they're going to be able to cut them. And that's doubly the case because we know that when unemployment's really high, it's quite hard. Firms face a lot of competition. It's quite hard for them to put their price up. Again, thinking about our restaurant, when unemployment is 90%, the last thing you want to be doing is putting your prices up. You've only got one customer as it is. If at all possible, you want to avoid increasing prices. So when unemployment's really, really high, so we have very high unemployment. What we're saying is that in those circumstances, inflation is likely to fall. Over here, everybody has a job. In the restaurant, all the tables are full. They've got queues running down the street. They're booked up till Christmas. Workers are working very, very hard, but also there's no spare workers out there. So if I was to leave, my job, then my firm would suddenly have a big problem because they wouldn't be able to get anybody because there are no spare workers out there. As a result, I'm in a very strong position. So over here, we can say that firms have the power. So firms are very powerful over in this situation here, over in the bargaining, in the pay bargaining system. Firms have a lot of power over workers. Whereas here, we can say, in this case, essentially workers have the power. And the reason is that I can't be replaced. And because I have the power, what that means is that with unemployment being 0%, I can get a big increase in my pay. Because I can simply say, well, look, if you don't give me a pay rise, I'm going to go and work for this other firm down the road. There's plenty of new businesses opening up. The firms are likely to do that because they've got loads of customers. They don't want to lose their workers. So as a result, they see their costs increasing, but they don't worry about it because all they do is they increase prices. And therefore, inflation is likely to rise. So when unemployment's very, very low, when we have very low unemployment over here, then what we can see is that inflation is going down. Here, we have very high unemployment. So as a result, sorry, I said that wrong. Over here, we have very low unemployment. As a result, inflation is starting to rise. Over here, we have very high unemployment. As a result, inflation is falling. Therefore, somewhere in between these two levels, there is a level of unemployment at which inflation is stable. It's going to be less than 90% and more than 0%, but that's where the NAIRU is, somewhere in between the two, where the power of firms is equal to the power of workers. So at the NAIRU, suppose inflation was 3%, then what that means is that workers are just powerful enough to get a 3% pay rise, but no more. Firms are just powerful enough to prevent them from getting more than a 3% pay rise, but they're not powerful enough to stop them from, to force it down in real terms. So the NAIRU is simply a balance point between the power of firms and the power of workers. That's a lot that's going to depend on kind of supply side conditions and so on, and we'll go on to talk about it, but that's the basic idea. Yeah, it is a level of unemployment where inflation is stable.